By the way, as I'm watching that video where Rita is lighting the candles, those candelabras were donated, I believe, by Andy and Bill Perez. A long time ago, because they said their other ones were ugly, and they were. Anyway, welcome to this special summer service of the River of Grass Unitarian Universalist Congregation, where we have gathered online through Zoom and Facebook Live while we anxiously await a newly remodeled rental space at Park of Commerce and give our worship leaders some time to rest and re-energize so that we may return in the fall, continuing to grow and go and flow the riverway. I'm Kathy Jones Rockow, and my pronouns are she and her. You here today on Zoom, we welcome you. And you on Facebook, we welcome you. However you made your way here among us this morning, we welcome you. We enter into this time together to connect again with one another, with the holy by any name and the light of love within us all. While we remain mindful that not everyone can breathe easily, we will pause now to breathe together into this morning's time of worship. In this congregation, it is our mission to nurture our spirits, love intentionally, and create a just and healthy planet in our enduring search for truth, meaning, and faith. What we share here is an affirmation that we are called to be agents of love and justice, and to build a world where everyone is cherished for who they are.
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than the whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than the whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
Good morning. My name is Tanya Gustafson, and my pronouns are she and her. July is Disability Pride Month, marking the anniversary of the American with Disabilities Act, signed into law on July 26, 1990. So today we ask ourselves, what is ableism? Ableism can be defined as a form of discrimination which is based on the false idea that disabled people are by default inferior, when in truth, disability is just another way for a mind or body to be. I want to share a reflection written by Rayla D. Matson, who is a single parent who lives in Bloomfield, Connecticut with their 3 children. Rayla is a religious professional and an avid writer. In Rayla's free time, Rayla enjoys cooking, baking, board and card games, and anything that makes them laugh. Rayla's word resonated with me because my daughter Aurora has autism, diagnosed when she was 2 years old. She has just turned 4, and I'm grateful that she is verbal and is in a good preschool special education program. But she cannot answer the question that every parent asks their kids when they get home: how was your day? So now I will share Rayla's words titled, I Ride Bus. My 3-year-old is almost completely nonverbal. Every day when she gets off the bus, I ask her the same question. I ask her how her day was, and every day I get the same answer. Mama, I ride bus. I ask her what she had for lunch and who she played with. I ask her if she went outside or made a new friend. No matter what I ask her, her answer is always the same. Mama, I ride bus. I'll admit when she was first diagnosed with autism, I cried a lot. And when she worked for months with Birth to 3, a program for infants and toddlers with disabilities, with not much improvement, I cried some more. When school started and I realized just how far behind the other kids she really was, there were more tears. I don't know whether I cried for her or if I cried for myself. I get angry when people mistreat my daughter or ask me what's wrong with her. I get mad when people avoid her and parents pull their kids away. I struggle when I don't know how her day was, or if she has made new friends, or if anyone plays with her at all. But all I really want is for my kids to be happy and healthy. Her health is great, and each day when she gets off the bus, she says with as much joy as she did the very first day and with as much enthusiasm as she can muster, Mama, I ride bus. And for me, shouldn't her joy be enough? Thank you.
The flaming chalice is a symbol of our Unitarian Universalist tradition, a beacon of religious liberty, shining through generations, now ours to hold high. As we light our chalice this morning, let us say together the words of Reverend Dr. Elizabeth M. Strong, who was an impassioned religious educator, pastoral counselor, parish minister, and lifelong disciple and scholar of Universalism. Her words are titled, "The Light for Everyone Who Comes into the World." Reverently, I bequeath this flame to you. This is the light that is lit for everyone who comes into this world. Bear this light to others, one by one. Let the flame go from life to life till all is lit with its warmth. Tell that the light means wisdom. Tell that the light means kindness. Tell that the light means understanding. Tell the light means tolerance. Tell that the life means sacrifice. Tell that the life is a vision of a fairer world. And tell that this is the life that is lit for everyone who comes into the world. In the light of love, let us renew our covenant as we say together, love is the spirit of this congregation and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta congregación.
Y el servicio, su ley principal.
Thank you, you do it.
Esta es nuestra gran promesa, vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad a través del amor y ayudarnos mutuamente.
Draw
In our community each week, we share pieces of our lives. Let us take a moment here with the people who love us for exactly who we are, where we are, right now. If you would like to share a thought, a prayer, a joy, or concern with us in this moment, write it in the chat and we will lift them up together. As William James wrote, we are like islands in the sea, separate on the surface, but connected in the deep. Let us share a moment of silent reflection, connecting us to all who are in need. We lift these things spoken and unspoken, asking that our hearts be seen, even as we become seers of hearts, that we may serve one another and those beyond our walls with love and thankfulness, today and every day. Amen, Amin, Aho, Ashe, Namaste, blessed be, and so it is.
We sustain and strengthen this beloved community and its work in our world through the gifts of our time, our skills, our love, and our money. Each Sunday, half of our undesignated offerings go to LifeNet for Families, which provides meals, clothing, and support for those in need here in Broward County. The other half supports our mission and ministry at River of Grass. You'll find several ways to give at our River of Grass donate page at the link on the screen and in the chat. You can text to give at any time or contact our office to set up convenient automated contributions. By whatever method best for you, please give generously and joyfully, that we may feed and fortify this congregation and its good work in the world.
My name is Andrew, and my pronoun is he, him, and them. There are some teacher-student relationships that change both forever. I offer my own story with a tutor named Trudy Paul. While pregnant, my mom contracted rubella. Pregnant women are at risk for miscarriage or stillbirth, and their developing babies are at risk for severe birth defects with lifelong consequences. I was born with hearing and vision loss and brain damage. These interfered with my ability to learn. I could not spell, nor write clearly. I was often at war with my brain, with my emotions, and my time management. Many of my teachers did not understand my disabilities or how to help me learn. They labeled me as lazy, weak, can't, or is unwilling to learn. Worse, some teachers lied, beat, or teased me just because I was different. Even though I was enrolled in a special school for kids like me, the school failed to teach me. From grade 2 to 5, I was not able to keep up with the other children in class. I was frustrated with my teachers, my parents, and the many cognitive tests I had to take every year. Even through all of this at home, I was raised to read with a dictionary by my side. I was reading well beyond my grade level. I had a complete library of how and why books to study from. I visited libraries often. I was creating art from the age 5 on and showing talent and skills. I studied Houdini, Da Vinci, and poetry. I performed stage magic and real escapes. School librarians requested art from me for them to display. I watched a lot of public television. Some saw me as deficient, and others saw me as gifted. But I was also beaten up a lot by my peers and teased to no end and often laughed at. My self-esteem was badly damaged, and I preferred to stay alone. School was supposed to be a safe place, but not for me. During the late 60s, learning disabilities in children were becoming a real thing to be studied. By the mid-70s, there were formal training degrees for teachers and tutors in this new discipline. The term, quote, neurodivergent, quote, was not invented yet. That definition refers to a person on the autism spectrum, or more generally, to someone whose brain processes information in a way different, that is not typical. When I was nearly 12, my parents moved to Shaker Heights, Ohio. They requested a meeting with the superintendent of schools. During the meeting, the superintendent explained that he could not think I could be placed in the 6th grade because I was so far behind. I was deficient. I could not tell time, recite the alphabet in order, spell correctly, or do simple math, as well as many other troublesome areas. The superintendent suggested I be placed into the Mercer School of Developmental Handicaps, but warned I would not ever get past the level I was at. I would be institutionalized for the rest of my life. During lunch, my mom explained she did not know what to do. She asked me to choose the Mercer School or to get tutoring. I already knew from my previous school that I did not want to be treated as an institutional child and not learn anything at all. Even at 12, I recognized the tutor path would be very hard, and I had already had school tutors who were poorly trained, but I wanted to move forward, not backward. So I told my mom I wanted to be tutored. She cried, being relieved of the choice. Understand, at 12 years old, I had to make a hard adult choice, and that choice defined me for the rest of my life. The superintendent sent a list of tutors to my mother. My father made clear I had no role in interviewing any of them. At most, each tutor interviewed me for about 10 minutes, then talked with my parents. I was so tired of the interviews and the stupid questions. I hated the process, but I was also scared by the prospect of not finding the right tutor that could help me. And then came Trudy Paul. She contacted my parents for an interview. I remember she arrived at 4:30 p.m. and told my parents she was going to spend time with me and not to interrupt our meeting. My mom was stunned. My father gave her a very dirty look. Trudy wrapped her arms around me and held me close and said, I have read his file thoroughly, but he is much more than a problem to be fixed. Up the stairs we went to my room. She saw lots of books, and one of the single beds was covered with many tools, drawings, colored pencils, lockpicks, handcuffs, shackles. The floor was just as poetic. She requested a thorough tour of my room, which took about 4 hours. She probed everything about me, about my projects. She asked about teachers and tutors and told me to be clear and blunt. Sometimes she hugged me and asked if I got many hugs. No, I replied. At one point, around 8, she cried a little bit. Time for us to go down and talk with your parents, she told me. My parents wanted me to return to my room, but Trudy stopped me and said, what I say to you needs to be heard by Andrew. There will be no secrets. She bent down to look directly in my face and said, you have every right to be angry, sad, and not trust the education system. You are not dumb, stupid, or lazy. The school system made you feel that way, which is wrong. Understand being tutored will be a lot of hard work, and you will need to give up time with your friends, projects, and TV. We will work 4 hours a day with some breaks. For almost 3 years, she worked with me while I gained the knowledge and skills needed for school and become a truly self-taught person. From Trudy, I learned that compassion can be helping others reclaim and gain their mind and skills for thinking. For me, she was a wise angel, seeing the worth and value of me. She would later become Special Education Coordinator, Office of Dependent Schools for the Department of Defense worldwide. Trudy was a true teacher and true educator who died last year. I am so fortunate she came into my life, saving me, giving me hope, and providing me the tools to learn. Thank you.
Joannio is a school in Syracuse, New York, and was the first school in the country to systematically include children who were labeled as autistic in regular classrooms with typical children. Joannio is an Onondaga tribal word that means to set free. This piece was written in celebration of the 25th anniversary of the school. It is titled, What the Children of Joannio Know, by Mara Sapone-Shevin. The children of Joannio know, not because they have been told, but because they have lived it.
That there is always room for everyone. In the circle, at snack time, on the playground, and even if they have to wiggle a little to get another body in, and even if they have to find a new way to do it, they can figure it out. And so it might be reasonable to assume that there's room enough for everyone in the world.
The children of Joannio know, not because they have been told, but because they have lived it.
That children come in a dazzling assortment of sizes, colors, and shapes, big and little, and all shades of brown and beige and pink. And some walk, and some use wheelchairs. But everyone gets around. And that saying is boring. And so it might be reasonable to assume that everyone in the world could be accepted for who they are.
The children of Joannio know, not because they have been told, but because they have lived it.
That there are people who talk with their mouths and people who talk with their hands, people who talk by pointing, and people who tell us all we need to know with their bodies if we only listen well. And so it might be reasonable to assume that all people of the world could learn to talk to and listen to each other.
The children of Joannio know, not because they have been told, but because they have lived it.
That we don't send people away because they're different or even because they're difficult, and that people need support, and that if people are hurting, we take time to notice, and that words can build bridges and hugs can heal. And so it might be reasonable to assume that all the people on the earth could reach out to each other and heal the wounds and make a world fit for us all.
Today's message comes from the Reverend Molly Hausch Gordon, who is a lifelong Unitarian Universalist from Tulsa, Oklahoma. A graduate of Harvard Divinity School, she serves as minister of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Columbia, Missouri, where she is passionate about community organizing. theology, and the warmth and fire of Unitarian Universalism in mid-Missouri. Her sermon today is titled Disability Theology for This Moment, and it won the 2022 Carolyn Cartland Sermon Award, which is presented by Equal Access, so that's EQUUAL, a voluntary organization of Unitarian Universalists committed to disability justice. She gave us permission to share it today. So let us begin. Eco-theologian Sally McFaig once asked, wouldn't it change everything to think of the world as God's body? Wouldn't it change everything to think of the world as God's body? The world is God's body, dimpled and cracked, fertile and barren, rugged and so soft. The world is God's body, belching undignified magma and emitting sulfurous fumes. The world is God's body, mountaintops amputated for coal within, deaf and covered in chattering birdsong, blind and blossoming in a million shades of pink, disabled and worth everything. If the world is God's body, God hurts every day. And this is not a tragedy, but fact, that everybody suffers and finds pleasure, dances and aches, lives and dies. If God has a body, does God have an unknown end lurking somewhere within? Cancer cells dividing too fast, neurons losing their spark. If the world is God's body, God is so powerful and so very vulnerable. We have learned a lot in these last few years about the vulnerability of the body, about our culture's anxiety of the body, about which bodies we treasure or trash, preserve or sacrifice, find worthy or ignore. In our collective pandemic reckoning with mortality and bodily limitations, with pain and suffering, we in this country have responded together as we often do, alternating denial and obsession, commodification and distraction, romanticization and rejection. Disabled Americans have been surprised by none of it, even as they have mobilized to advocate for their safety and dignity, even as they have innovated vast networks of collective care and agency, even as they have shared their lifelong experiences of surviving isolation and limitation and lack of access with abled folks who were shocked by the challenges of living in a circumscribed life in a world that had heretofore been built for them. And this morning we particularly learn from the wisdom of disability theology, which calls us toward living ever more profoundly, inclusively, fully, and joyfully into the limitations, pain, and mortality of our embodied existence and that of the earth. There are as many manifestations of disability theory and theology as there are ways of being in a body in this world. Disabled theologian Sharon Betcher, in her book, Spirit and the Politics of Disablement, proposes that the pursuit of disability justice requires, at its core, a theological shift. Betcher writes, where life is lofted into the idealistic, material sublime, there, because sorrow will not cease, because pain will not disappear, the body of the disabled will be made to carry the hostility that we feel toward the contours of our lives. Ultimately, she writes, only way disability justice enters the world is when every person engages for themselves in the deeply spiritual work of bearing the weight of our mortality, our finitude, and our pain as necessary realities of human experience and earthly truth. We must all teach our spirits to locate beauty and the value of life within that circumscription, within bodily limits and pain, and outside of categories of usefulness and wellness. Until we can do this, we will continue to other and project our anxieties upon disabled bodies and create unjust conditions that normalize abled existence, exclude and invisibilize disabled people, and do violence to disabled lives. Hatred and exclusion of disability suggest a basic religious and cultural denial of the truth that to live will involve us in suffering. Therefore, we must change our underpinnings. We must do our spiritual work, which Becher describes as imagining and embodying the love of life which can cope with suffering, which will find beauty beyond idealism in the midst of life. Disabled theologians, theorists, artists, and everyday folks show the way toward our collective spiritual work simply by speaking an exquisitely poignant love for the world from a location that most of modernity has deemed insufferable and unlivable. Of course, this must not be spiritual labor for abled folks to ask of disabled people, nor must it be a demand of disabled folks to be models or gurus for the abled, or for them to be always happy or overcoming. Rather, it is Becher's reminder that profound spiritual authority rests within those whose bodies and lives cannot pretend an absence of pain or challenge or suffering. Perhaps it is a reminder to all of us truly that it is our experience of our body's limits that teaches us the most about what it means to be alive in a beautiful and mortal world. Indeed, we are seeing on a massive scale in our world the crisis of ignored limits. The world is God's body, aching and fracked, bombed and melting, and we have refused to live within the limited abilities of the earth. Now we have made so much more suffering for our refusal to be mortal and small, our incapacity to rest and do less. And now we turn to a suffering world, and we want to fix it because we cannot accept its suffering. But it was our refusal to be mortal and small that got us into this mess in the first place. And maybe we just need to stop and be with our bodies and their limits for a while. Can you just stop and be with your body's limits for a while? Becher writes that disability justice will require turning our fearful and therefore zealous energies away from the goal of eradicating suffering, a goal that works against the presence of the disabled, and toward the spiritual wisdom of composing ourselves with equanimity before the shifting tectonics of a lifetime. She quotes Nietzsche, who wrote that to affirm life only in the hope of eradicating suffering is not to affirm this life. And this is actually the good news of disability theology for us all. The call to find beauty in what disability activist Leah Lakshmi Pepsna Samarasina calls adaptive joy, exactly within the circumstances of suffering that inevitably enter every life, because there will be so much of it. There is so much suffering, and there's also beauty and joy, not in transcending the muck of life, but right down in it. This good news of disability theology is decidedly not the call to overcome or make meaning of suffering, but rather the call to recognize and celebrate that meaning and beauty is already there in every condition of human life, every single one, even and especially the one society designates insufferable. We don't need to do anything to earn or make that beauty and meaning. It is always already there. Perhaps more than any system we've studied so far, disability theology troubles Unitarian and Universalist historic theologies in interesting and generative ways. Our Unitarian side inherited a goal of moral perfectibility, alongside capitalist assumptions of productivity as part of perfection. They believed in salvation by character and our responsibility to constantly do and be better. In fact, this belief that humanity could and should be perfected led to 20th century Unitarians dabbling in eugenics in our pursuit of progress, onward and upward forever in the flesh. A terrible, genocidal legacy. Universalists believed in universal salvation without any requirement of puritanical self-improvement, but as they came to believe that the only hell was the one we created on this earth, they became obsessed with this worldly salvation. They evolved to extremes when more universalists became religious naturalists, agnostic, or atheist. Without God to do the universal saving, the human to-do list became very long. To use the words of Sharon Betcher again, our fearful and therefore zealous energies were very much directed toward the goal of eradicating suffering. And she reminds us that this is a goal that works against the presence of the disabled. To these strands of our history, disability theology speaks a stark truth. We cannot save each other. We must not try to save each other. Salvation involves power imbalance anyway. Better to love each other through radical presence to what is, and through radical presence to what is, and freedom of mutual becoming, and great networks of collective care. Better to love each other with faith that our love does indeed change everything. Betcher writes, a religion that offers hope to the disabled would have much less to do with promising a future where tears will be no more, than with promising the physical space where we, the disabled, can limp or wheel up to or lie at the table without encountering the alienating social gaze, because all bodies present have metabolized their own mortality. That is, they have learned to hold the body humbly in mind. What does it mean for us as Unitarian Universalists to be reminded that we are not here to heal or save the world, but simply to love what is mortal? We are not here to heal or save. No. How would that shift our climate activism and help us hold our grief? How would that pave the way to disability justice and all kinds of justice, opening a radical and loving presence that insists upon inclusion without requiring our vision of salvation or wholeness? How would ceasing to pursue the healing or salvation of the world allow us to love it into a thriving that is richly varied and contextual and beautiful within the limits of life? Even and especially in our pursuit of just and beloved community, we are not here to heal or save the world, but to love what is mortal. And that will make all the difference.
For all that is in life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life.
And one other thing, I'd like to echo Steve's chat post on behalf of all of us. Thank you, Andrew, for your amazing testimony. You are, and this is in caps, amazing, astonishing, and incredible. Thank you, Andrew. At River of Grass, we offer many ways to live our Unitarian Universalist faith in action. You'll find them in our weekly email, our Facebook page and website, riverofgrassuu.org. Today, we have just one announcement for you. We will continue our summer journeys for July and August, visiting other congregations through Zoom and the internet. Watch your weekly email to find out what congregation we're visiting next week. And our next River of Grass hosted service is on July 23rd, titled Ever Willing, Becoming the People Our World Needs, which I will present on Zoom and Facebook. This is a sharing of the excerpts from the GA General Assembly Sunday service. And we will be back in Old Davies Schoolhouse in September. Please see the weekly email and website for more information about these announcements and other announcements.
Our chalice extinguishing today was written by Melissa Jeter, who is currently a full-time seminarian at the Methodist Theological School in Ohio, as well as a full-time librarian in Toledo, Ohio. Melissa is the student minister affiliated with the First Unitarian Church of Toledo and a regular participant in the Multi-Faith Council of Northwest Ohio. She writes, "We extinguish this chalice today, but we are illuminated by a faith that allows us to sit and think. In this quiet time, we can reflect in solitude, meditating on love and growing out of our comfort. Though we experience discomfort, we are excited to give birth to a new, just world."
And in these changing times, let us be all the more vigilant to hold before us a vision of world transformed and dare to transform ourselves to make it so. Until we meet again, shine on.